Hello, loves, and welcome to Fed Up Recovery Podcast. I'm Kim, and I used to work in an eating disorder clinic, and I myself recovered from an eating disorder. And today I'm here with my friend Katie. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Katie.
Absolutely. My name is Katie Kovakovich. I am a childhood longtime pal of Kim's and currently a graduate student at Boston University studying microsocial work and educational leadership and policy.
And do you have any experience with eating disorders, or did you have an eating disorder?
I personally have not had an eating disorder, but I've had many friends that I know and acquaintances that have had them, and I've tried to be supportive and also have a lot of things I'm still learning myself.
Mm-hmm. She's been a support person for me for a long time, too, so it's really cool to have her on the podcast today.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about traveling with an eating disorder or traveling after being recovered from an eating disorder. I'm going to give you tips and talk about my experiences as well and have Katie chime in on, her experiences and just travel in general. So, yeah, let's get started. Katie, when is the last place you traveled to?
I've actually moved around quite a bit, and recently, because of the pandemic, moved back to Minnesota, where we are currently, from Boston to finish studies remotely. But before that, I lived in Washington, D.C., so I did a big move to Boston in the fall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you do when does your eating change when you're traveling? Like, say you're doing a long drive. Is there something that you always do or how you eat while you drive?
Well, I've definitely gotten better at trying to plan things out because otherwise I find I eat more irregularly or eat differently than I normally do, which doesn't feel good. Even as someone who hasn't had an eating disorder, I don't enjoy that. And I'm curious, is that something that is especially hard for folks who've had an eating disorder, like changes in meals when you're traveling or the instability of kind of that naturally comes with traveling?
Yeah, definitely for me, with traveling, it used to be really hard not to know exactly like what's going in the food, especially when I was really restrictive. So I would, I'd like to cook my own food for sure and limit a lot of what goes into it. And a lot of traveling involves eating like fast food, especially driving across America.
Definitely.
Unless you really pack and plan ahead, it's a lot of stopping at like McDonald's or I don't know, there's not a lot of good choices unless you really plan ahead. You can stop at restaurants or pack food. Our family growing up did more of just fast food while we drove and stopping at gas stations like for snacks. So it's kind of like hard working with that. As I travel now, I'm like so much less I'm not restrictive anymore, and I've become a lot more flexible with my eating, and at the same time planning ahead has helped me a lot too. So bringing food that from grocery stores that I'm okay eating and food that lasts longer, I guess, that you can pack ahead.
Something I know that I've felt or heard a lot of people say when traveling is, I eat so much, or I feel like I'm just eating or overeating. What do you think about that mindset or that particular feeling that people might get when they're traveling?
That like you're overeating?
Yeah, or eating all the time, things like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of I wonder a lot about that too, because I think it's like both two things. Like you might be eating more than you normally do just because a lot of traveling ends up, especially if you're like you're traveling to a place. So while you're there, you're part of the experience of traveling somewhere is experiencing the culture and the food they eat, and just eating different foods is like exciting for a lot of people, especially for me now not having an eating disorder anymore. I just like really get excited about eating different foods. That's like why I want to go to different countries a lot of the time. So that might be the case that you eat more than normal, and that's just part of it. Like it's the trade-off for experiencing something new and having a good time in life. But at the same time, it might just be like a mindset thing. Like in your daily life, you're doing all these other things. Usually like you're going to work, you're doing, extracurricular, whatever things you like doing. Whereas when you're traveling, there's not as much stuff you're probably doing during the day, so you feel like you're just
I imagine.
Yeah, so you kind of just like maybe if you don't have a lot of activities you're doing the day, you're just kind of walking around, sightseeing, eating. It does feel like all day you're eating, which you do anyway. Like I mean, if you're a person
right.
that like most people, especially recovered people from eating disorders, like it's good to eat frequently, like maybe even small meals, but frequently. So yeah, you're eating all day. It's like
that's a normal thing to do.
Yeah, it's normal.
Basically.
It's just people. I think it's also like a validation thing people say a lot, like out loud.
Yes.
Like I notice like people are eating and they like someone that might be more stressed out about food, or it's just so culturally normal to just talk about, like, feel bad about how much you're eating. So like, oh, I feel like I'm eating so much. Oh, this meal is so heavier compared to what I'm used to eating. When it's like so unnecessary to say that.
Right. And it's just the natural instability of being in a new environment. Things are going to feel different, and you want to name those things. And then we inherently end up putting a label on it, whether or not that label is healthy or helpful, actually.
Like saying this food is like fattier than I normally eat, or
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know I was, when we were getting ready for this podcast, I'm thinking about it, I just did a quick Google search on, like tips for traveling with an eating disorder. And I personally found some that I think are a little bit goofy. I'm curious your thoughts as we're talking here today about different tips. And one of them was to take time away from technology, screen time. And I thought that was particularly goofy because, if you're stressed about a meal or you're experiencing binging and purging behaviors, I can imagine a phone break isn't exactly what someone needs. What are your thoughts on tips like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I should go through the whole list even.
Absolutely.
I'm curious.
Yeah, so there was...
how many are there, 10?
This one has 10 in it, this particular article. Okay. Talked about getting to the airport or train station early to avoid anxiety, planning ahead with snacks and food, which we sort of talked about a little bit, drinking lots of water, which we should just do normally, right? It's always a good thing to stay hydrated. Getting outside.
You do forget, though, like when you're in flying planes, I think the altitude like makes your body go through water faster, so I think you get dehydrated a lot quicker in a plane. So it's important to like actually really be intentional about drinking more water, because I know like being dehydrated can trigger binging.
Oh, okay.
I noticed that myself. If I'm really dehydrated, I might go for food instead of like your body can confuse like
mixed signals of what it needs.
You might end up overeating because you're
interesting.
I never thought about that. Actually.
Getting outside, fresh air.
Sure.
Get some sleep. Bring an eye covering and things like that if you're traveling in like a plane or a train. Giving yourself grace, always a good thing to do. Reaching out to your treatment team. What are your thoughts on that? Pre or during travel?
If you have a treatment team, if you're in recovery and you're like lucky enough to have a treatment team, that's a good idea. Tell them ahead of time, and you can, I'm sure I know a lot of eating disorder centers, they'll like write out even like every step along the way of what you're going to do in your entire meal plan and how that can fit into being in an airport. So like if you're needing a certain amount of food, like what places can provide that, because just like choosing can be stressful. So that's awesome.
Bringing healthy coping strategies like favorite books or music, knitting gear, things like that. And then the technology one that I had already mentioned.
Yeah. The thing about all these is they're very broad. So it's like advice that, I don't know, that I feel like is pretty obvious. Like, everybody knows that. Like, use your coping strategies. You kind of forget maybe in the moment, but I kind of want to talk about more like super specific things, which might not apply to everybody, but maybe it'll hit home.
Well, I know you mentioned at the beginning thinking about different stages of being in recovery. So do you have any advice for folks maybe that are currently in treatment or maybe are recovering? Are there different things people should do while traveling or keep in mind that might be helpful?
Probably. So if you're in treatment, so say you're currently on a meal plan, like I don't know if you're in, like say you're like in a treatment program in the moment and then you have to leave for a wedding, talk to your treatment team and they'll help you plan out like, what meals you're eating throughout the day. And you can, if you know where you're going to be, figure out how you can get the right amount of nutrition at each meal in different places. Like you're going to even a fast food restaurant, like what food will fit into your meal plan. Make sure you're doing your snacks. So a lot of treatment meal plans involve like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then snacks in between all of those and before bed. So bring snacks along with you, like your favorite granola bars, whatever you like eating that's like not probably perishable. That's the word, perishable. Yeah. It's not perishable. Bringing those things along, because it can be hard. Like I found something really hard for me is that especially while I was recovering, I would compare myself to eating of what other people are eating a lot. Sure. And I felt really embarrassed to have to eat a snack. So like a lot of people, like normal eaters, essentially, they can kind of like eat when they're hungry and full, and like it might have gotten to a point that it works for them just to eat like breakfast, maybe skip lunch and eat dinner, but like they just eat a lot bigger meals and that's what works for them. And that is essentially normal eating for some people. But if you're someone that's recovering from an eating disorder, like you're not ready for normal eating and you need to stick to your meal plan, because like the number one reason people relapse is a lot of the times just not sticking to your meal plan, and like thinking that you can like switch to normal eating right away. So like just not feeling shameful or like letting people know that you might need support around eating.
I was going to ask that. Is it helpful to voice to people that you are around or traveling with, kind of your meal plan or things that you need that would be helpful? Is that something you've done before?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like so good. If you can, I mean, everybody, I think for the most part, people will be really supportive. Like you'll be surprised,
Sure.
and maybe people don't know that you have an eating disorder that you're traveling with. Like try to tell them, or because then a lot of people are like willing to eat to your schedule, even. So like if you want to eat, like I need to eat lunch at noon, I need to eat breakfast at 8, I need to eat dinner at 6. Like, can we do everything we can to like make sure those are our meal times? And
Absolutely.
like voicing your needs is like really important.
Speaking from my own experience, like I said, I personally haven't had an eating disorder, but I had a friend a couple years back that I was living with who did have one, and when she did voice it before she had told us really about it, and we were not at home, we were traveling in somewhere else, and I was like, and other people were very receptive and more than willing. I mean, there was never a moment of judgment. It was just like, oh yeah, how can we support you? What are the things that we can do? And it was really easy for us to be able to accommodate, and it felt better because we could tell she was struggling or like a little more unhappy. So we just didn't really know what was going on. And it was actually really nice for us to hear too, this was something she was dealing with. And there were actually specific ways we could be helpful, because otherwise it just feels sort of, as a friend, you don't really know what to do, especially when you're away from home and things aren't normal for anybody. So I know that for me was actually a good thing. If you are someone who is recovering or in recovery, naming that can, with a trusted friend, of course, not just anybody, but I think actually can be a very good thing, at least as a friend. That was helpful.
Yeah, and I could say that too, because then say I'm the one with the eating disorder, right? And I'm traveling with you, and like 3 other people, right?
Right.
So, but you're the person that I really trust. So I tell you I have an eating disorder, blah blah blah. It sucks, and I'm gonna need and I need to eat at these times. I need to eat this much food. Can you help me like voice that to the group? Can you be someone else? Because it can be like it can be, you don't often if you have an eating disorder, you don't want to be like the center of attention. You don't want to be like, and people forget too, so you don't want to be constantly being like, let's eat now. And it's like your eating disorder voice is telling you like, nope, you can skip this meal. You can blah blah blah.
So it's almost an accountability method, but also a safe way for you to not be the center of that.
A little bit, and it makes it more anonymous, I guess. Like, say everybody doesn't know, like, if we're both saying, like, oh, let's eat at 8, and then it's less, like, it's, like, sharing the load a bit of, like, it's really hard to, like, even now I have a hard time, like, as being, like, recovered, essentially, for, like, 3 years. It's, like, I have a hard time voicing that I need to eat.
Yeah.
Like, I want somebody else to be the person that says that, like, let's have dinner now. Even though, like, I will eat, but, like, I have a really hard time saying my needs.
Interesting.
Even recovered. Yeah, it's weird. So, I mean, if you're, like, anorexic or if you're really struggling with restriction, it can be really hard.
Absolutely. That's a good sort of segue, because I was thinking about, we touched on how to travel or tips for traveling if you are currently in recovery and say have like a meal plan structure. But what are your thoughts about someone who is recovered or is but still working through that? Any specific tips that you found helpful or have thought about for someone in recovery or out of recovery, excuse me?
Yeah, I think the thing about being essentially recovered is that, like, I don't know, it's different for everybody. In my experience, I've never even considered myself, like, I say it, but like I've never really considered myself like recovered. Right. Like I kind of say like I'm in recovery and that I'll always be in recovery.
It's not just something that goes away and you're cured sort of thing.
Yeah, because especially when I'm doing well, like when life is going well and I'm like I'm surrounded by like a lot of people I love. I'm like doing things that I love. Like just life is like decent, you know. I find it really a lot easier to eat normal and to be recovered and not have eating disorder symptoms. But like if things go, like recently I had like something happen that was really stressful. And a lot of life changes, like, with COVID, just life is, like, crazy a bit. Yeah. And I could feel, like, my eating disorder voice getting louder and louder. And it's like you have to really actively work on fighting that, I guess, and, like, reaching out. Like, I started seeing a therapist again because I just needed help to manage the eating disorder symptoms, like, before they come up.
For sure.
Which is crazy. Like, it's something I would never have done before. But so
maybe that's a helpful thing for traveling, anticipating the needs you might have ahead of time and kind of having a plan for either those trigger points or those maybe relapse moments that would occur.
Yeah, like even knowing beforehand that like this could be as stressful. Like anytime I think you're changing, especially for someone that's normally in a strong routine and you're recovered, essentially, like anytime you're really changing that routine or doing something a little bit different, you're at a higher risk for relapse or lapses or, not doing well in your recovery. So tips, I would say, so just like recognize that ahead of time is like a number one tip that you might be in a harder place, and being gentle about yourself, like not feeling like you've like something's wrong with you and this will always be like this, but you're just in a harder position. Maybe another one would be, like having a backup meal plan, kind of like remembering that what your meal plan would have been while you're in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be like if you're someone that is like, I mostly intuitively eat these days, like I just kind of eat when I'm hungry and when I'm full because I've gotten enough in cue with my hunger and fullness signals that's what works the best for me. I don't like have like strict things that I eat or like strict amounts that I eat. But if things do feel really out of control, I might go back to kind of having a meal plan, like eating at certain times and making sure I get snacks. Because I'm more likely to binge when I'm traveling. I find that to be like, the only thing I really struggle with anymore is binge relapse. I won't really restrict anymore. And I don't purge anymore because it doesn't help anything. It only leads to more binges. So I'm like far enough away from like bulimia that like I can like tell myself not to purge, where it used to be very compulsive, I guess. But binging still is something I would struggle with. So to avoid binging, making sure that I'm eating enough and not getting too hungry during the day. So like if you're like, a lot of times I'll go traveling and I'm with friends and we'll walk, forever, like just walking through the city to explore like a European city. And like some people I travel with, they won't even eat lunch. Like it's just normal for them not to do that. But like I need to. So making sure that I still eat at those certain times.
Do you find it helpful also to travel with snacks, being in recovery, having snacks with you that you like?
Yeah. I love snacks.
Same. I always travel with snacks and backup stacks. That's my motto.
No, and it's like that's a good way to make friends too. It's like you're everybody loves snacks. Like normal eaters like to eat. They just like maybe don't like think ahead enough. Like they don't plan ahead enough to like bring snacks. But like if you just bring like a bag of like chocolate chips and like nuts and stuff, and like you're eating a snack, everyone will be like, oh, I want some.
Of course,
you know, like people will like you a lot more.
So here we are, helping each other and making friends at the same time. So win-win, really.
Yeah, it's one of the best things.
What are your thoughts on traveling alone versus with companions? Is it usually helpful to have people with you? Tell me about that in your perspective of recovery, having people with, or is it more triggering to be alone when you're traveling?
Yeah. So I've traveled a ton in my life, probably the last like 5 years while being.
Yeah, you have.
Like so much. For a lot of different reasons. It started, I guess, as like almost while I was had my eating disorder, like I saw it kind of as like a really escapism thing that I maybe if I like did something crazy, like my eating disorder would go away. And then I just got really obsessed with traveling and kind of formed my life around it, which is really great. But part of that was traveling alone because it's really difficult to find people to travel with. And I was so impulsive about it, spontaneous, I guess you'd say, that it would take too much work to plan with somebody. So I did a lot of alone traveling, and yes, it was really hard. It's because, I think that would be, I just had I have a hard time eating alone a lot of the times because I just forget what normal eating is. Sure. Like I had an eating disorder for so long that even now, like I will think that something is enough food.
If you're alone?
Yeah, I'll think like, I'm not trying to restrict, but I will end up restricting because I think it's enough food because my old eating disorder brain will think that that's enough. And then, especially in different countries, or I have a harder time comparing it maybe to what I should normally be eating. But then I find myself binging because I haven't been eating enough in the day, and then I get really angry at myself, and then there's all these crazy new exciting desserts and foods to eat, so I just end up like binging in these different countries.
Sure.
Which, it sucks. So I think I found that happening 2 years ago while I was, essentially recovered. Then I found myself kind of relapsing into binging. But this last year I made a really big point to not travel alone. And it helped a ton. Just having people with me, it's like I feel calmer. I get like really centered into reality a lot more. And just having people to always eat with is really helpful to me. finding travel buddies if you can
Travel
ever.
buddies are great.
Yeah, like if you have to do a trip, like, I don't know, like, yeah, funeral or a wedding and that you're traveling alone with, like, do what you can to find somebody to travel with. You'd be surprised if you have friends around that would just, like, want to, like, join you for the trip.
Yeah, or even cushion it on either end, who can help you depart and who's going to arrive with you kind of thing, if you can't have a specific plane buddy or something.
Yeah, or if you are traveling alone, like, meetup groups that, like I've done a lot of that when I'm traveling.
Just to be around people in general.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like,
meals.
travel clubs and couch surfing clubs and people that just want to eat with other people. I don't know.
Totally.
It's really fun. Or if you're staying in hostels, like meeting people that way and sharing cooking meals, like that's a really big part of hostel travel is people they just meet each other and you'll cook meals together, which can really help. And like learning a lot about different cultures and the way they eat and cooking. Yeah, it's really when you can work on your recovery and travel, there's like so much to learn about eating. And
I imagine so.
Yeah, it's
Have you
crazy.
found it helpful or grounding at all too? While you travel, be learning about the local cuisine or cooking habits of that place. Is that helpful at all, or just more of a fascinating thing in general?
I think both. Something that helped me a lot, I think, recovering from my eating disorder was traveling, because I grew up in a family that was really restrictive. Like my mom was a really restrictive eater, and so it wasn't like I didn't grow up learning a lot about like how to eat healthy and like how to eat like healthy in a recovered healthy way. Not like the obsession kind of healthy is how I grew up, more of like eating the most healthy option ever. But so traveling to other countries, and I don't know, like I would say like I traveled to France quite a bit, and I had a friend from Italy that I traveled with, and both of the way I learned, I mean, it's not like, universal, it's not like it's kind of generalized, but like these people that I traveled with, they both really ate, like they grew up cooking with their family, like cooking from the ground up, whatever.
Seed to table kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah. I don't know if they like garden necessarily, but like making everything kind of from scratch, and like it was just unheard of to like diet foods. I think was less common there. Like in the 90s, like everything diet, like no fat, no sugar, no nothing. Like how low calorie and how low sugar, whatever.
Absolutely, I remember that.
Can you get
very
your
well.
food is how I grew up eating, and that just like didn't exist there. Like it seemed really bizarre to them that like you wouldn't cook with oil, you wouldn't cook with butter. Yeah. So learning that, just like, and like, yeah, you can't be obsessive about everything you put in your food, because it's so like just part of the taste is like everything that goes into it. You can't like count the calories of it, because it's just so.
And that's how you make it, and that's just what it is, and what makes it taste good, right?
Yeah, and so like eating food, like I learned to like eat food like for the sake of eating food, that like it tastes delicious.
Yeah.
Which I really only learned like a couple of years ago, that like food can be fun. That like that you can like cook and eat and celebrate and
and I think that's such a beautiful grounding thing for all of us to learn other cultures' way of eating and engaging with food. I mean, diversifying our knowledge and our palates is really cool, I think, and something I'm absolutely obsessed with, and I love cooking and learning about new cuisines. So I think that's great for everyone. It's cool. That also can be a helpful thing for folks with an eating disorder to sort of see those other perspectives and learn more about food in a different way. That's a better way to engage with. Yeah, because you went to Norway, right? So what did you learn anything from like eating there? Did you new recipes? I would say I didn't as much because I was living on a campus, so the food was sort of just provided for us. I would say I think a lot of what you're talking about resonates too, in that like it was a shift in my eating, very much so, that you're like. And I think just accepting, well, I'm in a new place, I'm going to be eating new foods. I can't necessarily control what I want to eat all the time, but being able to engage with why do they eat, wienerpølse or whatever, like different. If I remember right, that's like, it's kind of like a hot dog, but they wrap it in like more of a flatbread. It was, I don't know, it's all right. But I've been to a number of different countries, and it's one of my favorite things about traveling is trying the food and eating the different things. I don't know if I'm trying to think of specific lessons maybe that I learned about food in those places, but yeah, I don't know. Either way, it's just cool eating different stuff. I don't know. I think the place I like the most, well, recently I was in Budapest for a few weeks. I was taking classes and staying with friends there, and the food there is like a lot heavier, I guess you would say. So it's just meat and potato heavy, Same was true in Norway, definitely.
Yeah, but it's so good. Oh my gosh, they have this. I'm obsessed with cabbage, and they have what is it? It's just like cabbage and dumplings, kind of. I don't know if you call them dumplings, but they're like they're kind of like dumplings,
Yeah,
like little
yeah,
dumplings,
sure.
and I don't know what else they put. Oh, it's so good, and like just butter. And I had this in Prague too. They had it at the Christmas market in Prague. And my God, I could just eat it forever. And I've tried to make it again at home, and I think it turned out okay. Not as good, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the point of that? It's just so good. But it's like a food that would be so scary, I think, for me to eat
Sure.
initially.
Like maybe years ago, that would not even have been on your mind to
Yeah,
be able to
yeah.
try. Yeah.
But, God, it's so good. Anyway, what else?
Any other
So
tips?
we're not
tips you
traveling now because of the quarantine. So this is a lot of
Right,
daydream
right.
is happening for me now.
I feel like we're just in that moment right now, recalling our
Yeah.
travels. Oh, remember when we could eat foods and go to different
Yeah,
places and
yeah.
experience that.
Now it's just kind of cooking the meals that we've traveled with, and
Mm-hmm.
we're in northern Minnesota right now, so there's not a lot of access to interesting ingredients, but we can do what we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing season is almost upon
Mhm.
us. So see what we can grow this summer, maybe.
My sister might make some lefse, which is it's a Norwegian thing, yeah.
Sure
I
is.
think so, but
Yeah,
a
very
lot of people eat
Scandinavian.
it in because there's Scandinavian roots, a lot of Scandinavian
Mhm.
roots in northern
Mhm.
Minnesota, so it's very common to eat up here. So I think we'll be doing some of that soon.
So if you had to do a fast five tips or tricks for folks in recovery or with an eating disorder for traveling, and we've talked about so many, but just kind of as a wrap it all up. I know nothing's neat or not messy about any of this, but talked about bringing snacks as one of them.
Yeah. Let's see. It's fast five. How fast can I talk? No, let's
We're
see.
not supposed
So
to do that.
I mean, number one, always get support wherever you can find it. If it's not with people you are around, if you just haven't gotten to the point with your recovery that you can ask for help with people you're close to, if you're listening to my podcast, you're already kind of getting help. Message me on Instagram. Message me on Instagram, I think is how we're doing it right now. And I'll help you. I have time now. I'll totally help you create a meal plan for just make a plan for how to travel. Support people. Number two, follow your meal plan. If you're someone in recovery, it's just so good to eat frequently throughout the day. And so stick to what works for you and how that fits into traveling. Number three, get sleep. It's true. That was on that list, I think, but get sleep, drink lots of water. The basic needs are really important. If you're taking medication, make sure to bring your medications along, have that. Now we have teletherapy, so if you're seeing a therapist, you can still see them online, even if you're doing a long trip. I'm sure every therapist is now ready for that, which is actually kind of a cool part
It
of
is really
this
cool.
whole thing, that is more access to therapy.
I know a lot of my peers in social work programs have been doing that in their internships, and
It's actually cool that they're learning how to transition to that.
absolutely, yeah, it's been sort of a wild process, but a lot of people I'm learning from and with are doing that process right now.
It's so smart. My God, how have we not done this before this? It's wild. It's obviously nice having in person, but if you can't, it's so much better.
Yeah, so especially while traveling, that's such a good option to have if you need a quick check-in or a session with someone.
Okay, that was three. So number four. I didn't say this before, but be gentle about yourself about exercise. How to fit exercise into travel. I'm not going to get into that now because that would be it's like an episode.
Separate episode, yeah, exercising while traveling.
But yeah, be gentle with yourself, be flexible, not really stretchy flexible, but flexible, I guess, in your
And
your
you had
lifestyle.
mentioned too the not feeling shame about saying what you need to, if you have a trusted travel companion or something like that, or if you need to have a snack, to not feel shame around those things, that type of grace for yourself.
Yeah. And I guess 5, what do we talk about? Food in other countries. So, part of traveling is appreciating and having new experiences and understanding that there's a trade-off for traveling sometimes. So it's what do you want out of your life? Do you want to live this super strict, rigid, eating disordered, I don't know, or obsessive eating life? Or do you want to live a rich, interesting life where you discover new things and maybe your body will change as a result? But the more you can let go of, trying to control everything in your life, the more life will happen, the more awesome your life can be and people you can meet and places you can see. And
so thinking more about all the trade-offs, like my body might have changed or my eating may have changed in this new place, but all of the things I learned and gained and people I met and experiences I had, weighing those against each other, so you're not just focused on how eating may have shifted or your body may have shifted.
Totally.
That's beautiful. I love that one.
Beautiful. I just say beautiful things. You know?
She really does.
Quite the
She's
poet.
just a stunning human inside and out. Her words
Thank you.
are
Oh,
magic.
I'll just hang out more. Okay, so I think that'll wrap it up for today. I hope that you all are treating yourselves well during this quarantine, and I know things are opening up around the world, really. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next podcast. Write in if you have any questions, and yeah, bye.